Today at 6, no government bailout for energy firms in trouble, but ministers say gas and electricity supplies are secure. A massive rise in the wholesale costs paid by energy firms raises fears about a winter crisis, but ministers offer reassurance.
There is absolutely no question, Mr. Speaker, of the lights going out or people being unable to heat their homes.
In supermarkets, it's feared that the rise in gas prices will cause a shortage of CO2, which is vital for food and drinks production.
CO2 is used everywhere in food manufacturing to keep stuff fresh for longer. Without it, there'll be shortages and food waste.
Yes, we'll have the latest on today's emergency talks and the search for a solution. Also on the programme, the ban on UK and EU travellers going to the US will be lifted in November, 20 months after it began. In the Canary Islands, a volcanic eruption on Palma, the first for half a century, forces 5,000 people from their homes.
Age is rarely kind to anyone.
And plenty of British success at the Emmys in Los Angeles, where The Crown won Best Drama Series.
And coming up on the BBC News Channel, the ECB cancelled the tours of the men and women's teams due to travel to Pakistan next month.
Good evening. There will be no bailout for energy firms in trouble, according to the Business Secretary, who's been holding crisis talks with industry leaders today. Kwasi Kwarteng said that customers would be protected if more energy companies went out of business, and he said there was no prospect of an energy supply emergency this winter. Now, the growing crisis has been caused by a massive rise in the wholesale prices paid by the energy suppliers. The food and drinks industry is also warning that one of the knock-on effects of the situation will be more shortages in the shops. Our business editor, Simon Jack, has the latest.
The UK energy sector is in crisis. Dozens of small energy providers have already gone bust, and dozens more are not expected to make it through winter, as soaring energy prices leave many unable to deliver on price promises made to millions of customers who are encouraged to look for the best deals.
Secretary of State.
In the Commons today, the Business Secretary sought to reassure customers ahead of winter.
We have sufficient capacity and more than sufficient capacity to meet demand, and we do not expect supply emergencies to occur this winter. There is absolutely no question, Mr. Speaker, of the lights going out or people being unable to heat their homes.
He also announced a government-imposed price cap would be maintained, but that's one of the things creating problems for providers, as the wholesale cost of gas is miles higher than the retail cap.
You can see here exactly what has happened to wholesale gas prices. They have more than tripled since the beginning of the year, rising 70% in August alone. That's the what. Why? Some global issues. There's been a surge in demand for energy as the world economy awakes from the COVID-19 deep freeze. International stockpiles are unusually low for this time of year. And Russia has been accused of withholding supplies to pressurise EU governments to approve a new pipeline into Europe, but some UK-specific ones too. We've had outages at ageing nuclear plants. We've had maintenance on some North Sea gas platforms. We had a fire knocking out a pipeline that brings in energy from Europe. And the wind hasn't been blowing, which means wind turbines are generating less, which means gas-fired power stations have to produce more.
Many new smaller companies set up offering cheap deals, but unlike the bigger players, many didn't insure themselves against a price spike of this magnitude, leaving some of them now with bleak prospects.
In the current market, as it is, we're not going to see it through the winter. If it gets worse, then that timescale gets shortened. I think ourselves, along with a lot of other small energy suppliers out there, need direct government intervention to be able to see it through the coming months.
But the government said it will not bail out failing companies, but it will need to find a way to compensate the surviving firms for taking on millions of loss-making accounts. But what should you do if your supplier goes bust?
there's a tried and tested safety net which protects customers and will move you to another supplier. That will be done automatically. There's nothing that you need to do yourself. So actually our best advice is to sit tight. It may take a few weeks for that to happen. We do advise people to take a meter reading, or even better, to take a photograph of your meter.
Some big energy bosses have described this crisis as a failure of regulation. New companies offered cheap deals to grab a share of the market with no plan in place if the cost of supplying energy rose above the amount they were allowed to charge. Whoever ends up paying, the bill for this crisis will run into billions. Simon Jack, BBC News.
As I mentioned earlier, the energy crisis is already having an impact on supermarket chains and their customers. The rise in gas prices has caused a shortage of carbon dioxide, which is essential to many food and drink production methods. And the result, according to the Food and Drink Federation, could be serious consequences for meat and fresh produce as well as fizzy drinks. Our business correspondent, Emmy has been investigating.
This pig farm in East Yorkshire sends more than 1,500 animals a week to an abattoir for slaughter. They're stunned with carbon dioxide. But if that runs out, the pigs can't leave and the backlog will have to be dealt with.
If government don't step in and sort this massive problem out, then basically these pigs here in this shed will have to be culled on farm and they'll go into landfill. And that to me is criminal.
Here's the issue. Most of the UK's CO2 comes as a byproduct from 2 fertiliser plants. They've shut down because gas prices are so high, it's uneconomic. At the UK's biggest chicken supplier, they use CO2 in packaging to prolong shelf life and to stun the birds before processing. But the gas tanks will soon be empty.
We are at a crisis point. We've got 4 to 5 days left, and we'll have to reduce our production by 10%.
How many chickens is that?
Well, that's over 500,000 chickens a week.
How long has the government got to try to solve this then?
You've only got days and hours. The thing here is the government need to intervene, get these plants up and running and save Christmas, and actually save the food supply chain.
It's not just pork and poultry. CO2 is used everywhere in food manufacturing to keep stuff fresh for longer. For instance, ready-made pizzas, bags of cheese. It's in bags of salad, ready meals. Here's a naan bread. And of course it puts the fizz into fizzy drinks. Without it, there'll be shortages and food waste. It takes a lot of natural gas and CO2 to grow some of our fresh produce too, like these cucumbers under cover. Luke says growers may have to shorten the planting season now the costs are so high.
Growers are telling us that if the energy market doesn't stabilise or government do not provide some sort of help for the growing sector, that we may have to see an early finish to the UK season and a late start next year and replace this with imports.
The government insists food won't run out. The industry is resilient. But the pressure's now on for ministers to find a solution to minimise further disruption to the food supply chain. Emma Simpson, BBC News.
With me here in the studio, our business editor, Simon Jack. Simon, clearly there are lots of powerful factors at play. Is there any ultimate solution that comes to mind right now?
Well, there's a number of different mechanisms. Just today, Ofgem said that British Gas would take on the accounts of a company called People's Energy, which is failing. Now, that will cost British Gas around £200 million. And that money will be funneled through something called a levy and will end up being spread out across everyone else's bills. Now, if we get dozens of companies going bust, we may need a different mechanism. The talks, I understand, are centring around the government giving guarantees on loans to the big companies that survive, not propping up the failing ones, basically giving money to those companies who are taking on companies from failed companies, and they will use those loans and pay it back over a number of years. So trying to stagger this payment over several years, because the basic problem is what happens when the cost price of something you're selling is higher than the amount you're allowed to retail it at.
because of the cap. That creates a structural problem, and they're putting their heads together as we speak to try and find it out. But one way or another, through our bills or through taxes, we will end up paying for this crisis.
OK, Simon, many thanks again. Simon Jack, our business editor there. By the way, more information for you on what this could mean for energy bills and other finance aspects to BBC News Online. The address for you, bbc.co.uk/news. And there you have some reports and some analysis from Simon and other colleagues. Now, some more of the day's main news from November. Vaccinated passengers will be able to enter the US from the UK and the European Union. The decision taken by President Biden will end 20 months of travel restrictions, which were brought in by President Trump. And the changes only apply to those travellers who have received 2 doses of a COVID vaccine. Now, the sudden change is being seen as something of a diplomatic achievement for London and for Brussels. Our North America editor, John Sopel, is in Washington to tell us more about this, John, and the rather sudden nature of it.
Yeah, I think this came as a bolt out of the blue to London, who had very low expectations that this would happen. And it's come as a bit of a bolt out of the blue for many in the White House who thought this was months away. What seems to have happened is that Joe Biden is facing growing disaffection from his European allies, the French furious withdrawing their ambassador over that submarine deal with Australia, others upset about what's happened in Afghanistan. This week, Joe Biden is at the United Nations. It's almost as though he wanted to clear the decks of some of the troubles and do something that would please his European critics, and thus the announcement. Now, there is still a lot to work out. For example, will children between the ages of 12 and 18 who've only had a single vaccine, UK policy, be able to travel here? The British believe they've got an assurance that those with the AstraZeneca vaccine will be OK to come here. But, you know, passenger numbers were down 84% last month compared to 2 years ago. So this is a mighty boost for the industry, but most importantly, it is a huge boost for loved ones who haven't been able to see their relatives for over 18 months now.
John, thank you very much again at the White House. John Sopel, our North America editor. And John, there was mentioning New York and the UN meeting. Well, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, is in New York as well, where he and dozens of other world leaders will be attending that meeting of the United Nations. Mr. Johnson says he's using the opportunity to urge fellow leaders to sign up to financial and environmental targets ahead of November's climate change conference, which is called COP26 in Glasgow. He calls it a turning point for the world. But he has admitted it is tough to persuade allies to meet their target of giving $100 billion a year to developing nations to cut their carbon emissions. This report from our political editor Laura Kuensberg contains some flashing images.
An emergency unfolding, the point the Prime Minister travelled to New York to make. The United Nations meeting here is not united in how to slow down changes to the planet, how much to spend, how much carbon to save.
We are close to the moment to start. Yeah.
Boris Johnson's mission to try to push other countries into line.
Everybody always agrees that something must be done.
Saying something isn't enough for him. It's only chance that's put the UK in charge of trying to get global agreement this autumn. So success or failure is about political ambition as well as the planet.
We have to grow up and take our responsibilities. I think we go through, a period of glorious indifference about the world. We've been through that. We've been through our childhood, if you like. We now got to realise that this is a problem that requires grip.
The official international machine urges progress.
Our world is challenged like never before. From climate change to conflicts to COVID-19, it would be easy to lose hope. But we are not hopeless.
Yet what hope is there really when vast countries like China, India, huge emitters of carbon, aren't quite so keen?
Strangely, this meeting really matters to Downing Street because of the next big international shindig at home, the climate conference in Glasgow at the beginning of November. The Prime Minister wants all countries, big and small, wealthy and less so, to make more dramatic promises to cut their carbon, and for the richer ones to put their hands in their pockets to help the others go green. Right now, he only puts the chances of that happening in time at 6 out of 10. So there's a real demand for Boris Johnson to create momentum here in Manhattan.
Nice to see you.
Who will be moved? The outspoken Brazilian leader has let the Amazon forest burn. Boris Johnson vowed to tell Jair Bolsonaro to stop and reverse what's going on. But every country on the stage in New York this week has its own interests. Every country its own political climate. This week, the Prime Minister's powers of persuasion may not stretch far enough. Laura Kunzberg, BBC News, New York.
Police in Derbyshire have arrested a man as part of a murder investigation after 4 people were found dead at a house in Killamarsh near Sheffield yesterday. The force say they are not looking for anyone else in connection with the deaths. 2 children were found dead at the house along with their mother and another child. Our correspondent Danny Savage reports now.
It was early yesterday morning when police were called to this semi-detached house in Killamarsh. They discovered the bodies of 3 children and a woman. Today, 13-year-old John Bennett and his 11-year-old sister Lacey were named as 2 of the victims. They are pictured here with their dad, Jason.
I just don't know how he's going to even come through this.
I don't.
His parents visited the scene today and stopped to talk to reporters. They are devastated at the loss of their grandchildren and are supporting their son.
They're the most well-mannered children you'd ever meet.
Yeah.
As kids nowadays, they were well-mannered, they always remembered the manners, they always please and thank you. If you ever brought them a present, the first thing they did was go on Facebook and thank you. I don't know how we're going to manage without them.
No.
Jason Bennett said on Facebook, "Absolutely broken my heart into a million pieces. My beautiful boy John and beautiful daughter Lacey have been taken away from me. Their mum Terry also lost her life. Life will never be the same." Terry Harris, the children's mother, was 35 years old. The third child who died was 11-year-old Connie Gent from Sheffield. She was Lacey's friend, staying here on a sleepover. This afternoon, the Chief Constable of Derbyshire came to the scene.
The man officers arrested at the scene, a 31-year-old from Killamarsh, remains in police custody on suspicion of the murders of Terry, Lacey, John Paul and Connie.
Specialist police officers are now examining the house and the area around it to establish exactly what happened. Danny Savage, BBC News, Killamarsh near Sheffield.
Time is just coming up to 17 minutes past 6. Our main story this evening. Amid rising energy costs, the government insists that gas and electricity supplies are secure, but it says there'll be no bailout for energy firms in trouble.
And I'm at the Chelsea Flower Show, where for the first time in its 108-year history, it's being held in autumn.
Coming up on Sports Day on the BBC News channel, as Derby County enter administration, the club seek a new owner to safeguard their future with the threat of relegation to the 3rd tier, now facing the sun.
On the Spanish island of La Palma, part of the Canary Islands, thousands of people have been moved from their homes. 100 homes have been destroyed. Flights have been cancelled after a volcano erupted yesterday. The flow of lava, at times 15 metres high, destroyed everything in its path. It's the first time in a half-century that the Cumbre Vieja volcano on La Palma has erupted. No injuries have been reported so far. Our correspondent James Reynolds has the latest.
Buildings which once had a good view of the Cumbre Vieja volcano now have an even better view of its lava. The eruption is now steadily burning its way through homes.
The noise coming from the volcano, it sounds like, I don't know, 20 fighter jets taking off right now, and it's extremely loud.
No one has seen anything like this on the island of La Palma for half a century. The eruption has created its own apocalyptic landscape. Rivers of lava channel their way down towards nearby villages.
Mira, mira, mira cómo cae.
Look, look, it's falling, the man says. The flow of lava takes down a building.
Toma por culo.
Houses in surrounding areas have also been swallowed up.
Ahí hay 8 metros de lava.
8 metres of lava, he says.
Lo más importante es garantizar la seguridad.
Right now, the most important thing is to guarantee security. We are still in the eruption phase of the volcano's activity. Please, let's be extremely careful.
Extrememos la precaución.
The authorities have ordered the residents of 4 villages to get to safety. And tourists have decided to go home.
I'm worried, or I'm sorry for all the people that are losing or already have lost their houses.
We have no good feeling now on this island, and therefore we want to leave so fast as possible.
But Spain's tourism minister says she sees the eruption as an opportunity, a chance to entice tourists to come back and see this spectacle from a safe distance. James Reynolds, BBC News.
A gunman has killed 6 people at a university in the Russian city of Perm and injured many others. The attack happened this morning. Students and teachers barricaded themselves inside the university building. Russian police says that the attacker has been detained, and some reports say he'd written on social media that he was acting alone and had no political or religious motives. England have cancelled the upcoming men's and women's cricket tours of Pakistan just days after New Zealand abandoned their series over security concerns. The men's side were due to play Pakistan in 2 2020 internationals next month, with the women playing 3 one-day internationals, all in Rawalpindi. The rollout of COVID vaccines to healthy 12 to 15-year-olds has started today in England and in Scotland. Invitations are being sent out in Wales this week, while in Northern Ireland the vaccinations are likely to be offered from October. It's part of the drive to get more people protected ahead of winter. Booster shots are also being offered to the over 50s, to vulnerable people and to health and social care workers. Our health correspondent Dominic Hughes has more details.
Not the usual start to the school week for 14-year-old Jack, a pupil at Belfair Academy in Essex.
This is the arm I'm going to be using, right?
He's one of the first healthy 12 to 15-year-olds in England to receive the vaccine as part of the latest rollout.
I'm happy I've got it because it makes it easier to go out and enjoy myself now.
Schools do need to get permission from parents or guardians, but if that's withheld and the child is judged to be competent to reach a decision, they could give consent. The judgment on vaccinating this younger age group was finely balanced and was made only after factors like the disruption to education were taken into account.
It's really important to remember that the UK Chief Medical Officers have supported the introduction of the vaccine to this age group, and that's then been signed off by government. And we're doing it, we're rolling it out in schools because it is our best chance not just to protect children but to protect families as well.
Hands up who thinks we should vaccinate 12 to 15-year-olds.
At St Margaret's Academy in Liverpool, they've been poised for the vaccine rollout, with most pupils keen to take part.
Personally, I would want to get the vaccine. It's going to help prevent the spread of COVID furthermore.
Because I would be able to keep other people safe, and also I could keep doing my education as well.
I think it would help everyone, reduce the spread. It's not just for my safety, it's for everyone's safety as well.
Vaccinations for young people are also underway at drop-in centres in Scotland and will start early next month in Wales and Northern Ireland.
We want to make sure every single 12 to 15-year-old is protected, and not only protected for themselves, but also as they go into school, it helps to protect, hopefully, their teachers and others that they interact with in school too.
Do you want to roll up your sleeve for me?
For health and care workers, vulnerable people and the over 50s, the booster jab programme is also now up and running, ensuring as many of us as possible have some vaccine protection ahead of what could be a challenging winter.
All right.
Dominic Hughes, BBC News.
Let's have a look at the latest official figures on the pandemic in the UK. There were 36,100 new infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period. And that means in the past week an average of 30,378 new cases every day. And the latest figures showed 7,847 people with COVID are being treated in hospital in the UK. Another 49 deaths have been recorded of people who died within 28 days of a positive test. The average number of deaths per day in the past week is now 142. To look at vaccinations, 89.4% of people aged 16 or over have had their first jab, while 81.8% are now double vaccinated. British stars had a very successful night at the 73rd Primetime Emmy Awards in Los Angeles. The Netflix royal drama The Crown was a big winner, including Best Drama Series, and 4 acting wins for Gillian Anderson, Olivia Colman, Josh O'Connor and Tobias Menzies. The Apple TV comedy Ted Lasso was also recognised. Our correspondent Sophie Long was watching the events.
An ecstatic Hannah Waddingham took the first British award of the evening for her role in Ted Lasso, beating her best lead actor in a comedy went to Jason Sudeikis, the man who created and stars in it.
Write the tale that scares you, that makes you feel uncertain, that isn't comfortable. I dare you. I dedicate this story to every single survivor of sexual assaults. Thank you.
The show the Television Academy put on may have looked daring and diverse, but when you look at who went home with which awards, the big winners of the night were once again predominantly white. Sophie Long, BBC News, Hollywood.
Princess Beatrice and husband Edoardo Mapelli-Mozzi, seen here at Wimbledon this summer, have shared their delight after the safe arrival of their baby daughter. The Queen's granddaughter gave birth to her first child, weighing 6 pounds 2 ounces, on Saturday, and it happened at the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital in London. The Chelsea Flower Show, first held at the Royal Hospital Chelsea in London back in 1913, is being held in September for the first time in its history instead of its usual period at the end of May. It means that this year will be notable for an absence of late spring flowers and will feature the delights of autumn. So let's join our correspondent Daniela Relf, who's there to tell us more.
Well, the first day here, Huw, is where celebrities and royalty get to view the show, and they've seen a very different kind of Chelsea today, with autumn gardens highlighting climate change and conservation, as well as a number of other late flowering plants at this time of year.
Chelsea is looking autumnal for this unique September show. Royal approval came this afternoon from the Earl and Countess of Wessex. The change of date means the Queen is not here this year. But acting royalty was on hand in the Queen's Green Canopy Garden, where we're all being encouraged to plant a tree for next year's Platinum Jubilee.
Are you a keen gardener?
I'm not a gardener at all because I'm frightened of worms. But I have very, very good gardener. In fact, I have 2 great gardeners, and so I'm very lucky. We know about climate change and we talk about climate change, but this is actually doing something about climate change. You know, planting trees, we know will help. We must do it.
Giant window boxes in the COP26 garden mark this year's UN Climate Change Conference. The message, however small your space is, you can make a difference.
If you've got a windowsill, have a window box, plant it up, watch the pollinators, watch the bees that will come to that, and it will provide a little sort of green corridor in an urban environment.
The first day of Chelsea draws a celebrity crowd of gardening enthusiasts.
Like a lot of people, I kind of started getting into it a bit over lockdown. And I love a peony, you know, and we've got a lot of rose bushes back in California, and I love those, like cutting the roses every Thursday with my son, which is quite sweet.
Autumn's my favourite season anyway. I think they should switch it to autumn all the time.
But a permanent change won't happen. This week is a one-off chance to enjoy the unfamiliar sights of an autumn show. Daniela Ralph, BBC News, Chelsea.
Well, after all that autumnal talk, let's look at the weather and join Stav. Hi, Stav.
Hi there, Huw. Thank you very much. Good evening to you. Well, the weather looks like it'll stay pretty fine for the next few days across the southeast of England there into Chelsea. But further north, we'll start to see some changes towards the latter part of the week, something a bit more autumnal, just in time, in fact, and the autumn equinox. Now, we've had a couple of weather fronts around, bringing rather grey skies. This one's been pushing into Scotland, Northern Ireland, some spots of rain here. And we've also had yesterday's weather front plaguing East Anglia in the southeast, bringing rather cloudy skies. A few showers there as well. Elsewhere, it's been a glorious day with lots of sunshine around. The weather front across the north will sink southwards and fizzle out, much like the one across the southeast of England will. So many places will be dry tonight. Winds light for most away from the northwest of Scotland. So under clear skies, light winds, temperatures will dip into single digits out of town, double figures where you hold on to any cloud. So our area of high pressure still with us then into Tuesday, dominating the scene. So it's going to be a fairly fresh start, I'd say. A little bit of mist and fog. once that clears, it's a glorious day for most of the country. Quite breezy for the north and west of Scotland here, with further patches of cloud moving in. The mid-teens here, but 20 for Aberdeen, 21 or 22 further south, feeling very warm for the time of year. Now, we'll start to see some changes middle part of the week across the north of the UK. This deep low to the north of the country will bring about some strong winds, maybe some gales for Scotland, and a band of pretty heavy rain, which will sink southwards and slowly ease down. It'll leave sunshine and showers in its wake. But to the south of it, for much of England and Wales, another fine day to come with some sunshine. Top temperatures around 20 to 22 degrees. So more autumnal feel to things for a time across the north of the UK, even as we head on into Thursday and Friday. A little bit cooler, but temperatures begin to recover. Across the south, it stays fine and quite warm for the entire week. Huw.
Many thanks, Stav. Once again, Stav there with the latest on the weather for us. Quick reminder then of our main story today. With rising energy costs, the government insists that gas and electricity supplies are secure, but it adds there will be no bailout for energy firms which are in trouble. That's all from BBC News at 6. I'll be back at 10. Hope to see you then. Now on BBC One, it's time to join the BBC's news teams where you are. Bye for now.